Hello, I'm going to take the liberty of getting started a few minutes earlier than we generally would, because we only have an hour and a half till 4:30, and I know that Dr. Vu has a lot to say. And so I want to make sure that we not only hear from him fully, but also I've just had the opportunity to hear Zach Abuza talk about Vietnam, and I think it'll be very worthwhile as well to hear his comments. My name is Carl Gershman, and I'm president of the National Endowment for Democracy, and on behalf of the Endowment's International Forum for Democratic Studies, I'm pleased to welcome everyone to today's presentation, Implementing Human Rights as a Path to Democracy in Vietnam, featuring our Reagan Purcell Democracy Fellow, Dr. Huy Ha Vu. And we're also delighted to have Professor Abuza with us, who is a political scientist. He has been at the National War College and at Simmons College in Boston. The NED, as I think everyone knows, is funded by the U.S. The Reagan Purcell program, which is part of the NED, is funded by the U.S. Congress and hosts some of the world's most dedicated democracy activists, scholars, and journalists to conduct independent research and pursue projects here at the NED. And it's now in its 13th year and has hosted more than 200 fellows from over 80 countries since its founding in 2001. And within this remarkable group, our speaker today stands out for his very unwavering commitment to democracy in Vietnam. As Vietnam opens its economy and expands its multilateral partnerships, its government continues to look to the West for help in coping with its economic crisis and political problems. And even as Vietnam has made recent gains in negotiations over the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the partial lifting of the U.S. arms embargo, human rights violations at the hands of the ruling Communist Party remain a cause for concern. And drawing on his experiences as a prominent human rights lawyer and political prisoner, Dr. Vu will discuss the Communist Party's repressive laws and actions and offer a perspective on the current state of Vietnamese civil society, and he'll find recommendations for expanding freedoms in Vietnam. You have his bio in the program that has been released, so I'm not going to read it completely, except to say that he's a leading constitutional scholar and legal advocate who's written widely on civil and political rights in Vietnam, and through a law that he established with his wife, which is attorney Nguyen Thi Duong Ha, who is a well-known human rights defender in her own right, Dr. Vu has challenged the Communist Party's monopoly on power and has encouraged citizens to stand up against the government's unlawful and repressive acts. I know also that he's a very talented artist, and his father was one of Vietnam's leading poets, who happened also to have known Ho Chi Minh. And I guess his mother was also associated as a nurse, was it, for Ho Chi Minh. So it's really quite a remarkable story that he has, and I'm happy to say that he arrived here straight from prison. He was released, I think it was at the beginning of April. And one of the reasons he was prepared to leave, he was not becoming an exile. He was coming to NED as a fellow, and we're very, very proud of that. And we had a wonderful reception for him when he arrived at the beginning of April, and we're delighted to have him as part of the NED family now, along with his wife. And so he'll speak. I think he may go a little bit over the standard of 30 minutes, but I think we'll have enough time for Q&A. And then to also hear the comments from Professor Abuza, which I know are going to be very, very interesting. For those of you who are on Twitter, you can follow this presentation and contribute to the conversation by using the hashtag NEDEvents, or by following the forum at Think Democracy and the endowment at NE Democracy. If you have not already done so, please take a moment to silence your cell phones. And finally, I want to take this opportunity to thank the many staff members involved with this event, and most especially our research associate, Hainer Cibrian, who has offered vital assistance to the fellowship project, and to Dr. Vu for today's presentation. I take it that we're going to be using the screen, so is that correct? So we should exit the stage. And if you, I think you're going to be speaking from here.
Thank you very much, Carl, for your very kind introduction. And thank you, Dr. Professor Zachary Abuza, a very well-known expert on Indo-China questions and ASEAN countries too. And I'm very, very happy with your presence here. And first, allow me to introduce Professor Mingok, who will help me to translate something in case I cannot see clearly your question. So please. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very, very happy today to present my opinions about the democracy movement in Vietnam and how to remove the communist regime in Vietnam. The title of my presentation today is Implementing Human Rights as a Path to Democracy in Vietnam. That are some main points, 6 parts. Okay, we pass to introduction. As you know, all dictatorships try to keep power to human rights is a violation because they rely on exactly they rely on suppression of human rights, and so to democratize dictatorship in general all over the world, and especially the totalitarian regime of Communist Party of Vietnam, we must end the suppression of human rights by Vietnamese communist government. And in that effort, I think we need two forces, domestic and international. Domestic, that's mean first civil society, and the rest of the international democratic community all over the world, the Western democracies, and especially American government. Now I pass to the history of the communist regime in Vietnam. In 1930, Communist Party of Vietnam was born. But 15 years later, Communist Party of Vietnam succeeded in overthrowing the French colonialism and founded the first republic in Vietnam, that was Republic Democratic Republic of Vietnam. And oh, excuse me. Okay, thank you, thank you. And the photo of the first government of the Democratic of Vietnam, born September 2nd, 1945. And the members of the government headed by Ho Chi Minh. And this man, he was my father. He was a minister when he was 25 years old only. So my father is one of the signers of independence declaration of independence of Vietnam. But as you know, of course, the Communist Party Vietnam wanted to establish its dictatorship very soon, but because of the war with the French that lasted from 46 until 54 last century, and only after the Geneva Conference in 1954, Communist Party Vietnam could consolidate its power in the North Vietnam only, and this party had to wait until April 30, 1975. Communist Party Vietnam could impose its dictatorship in all of Vietnam, precisely after the communist victory over the Republic of Vietnam, backed by the U.S. at the time. And of course, after the 1 year later, in 1976, Communist Party replaced Democratic Republic of Vietnam by Socialist Republic of Vietnam, just following the model of USSR, just to assert an absolute dictatorship of Communist Party. And I just told you that the dictatorship of Communist Party of Vietnam can exist only by suppressing human rights. But for long and up to now, Vietnam is on the brink of collapse economically, and at the same time facing to the invasion and just invasion from communist China, and Vietnamese leadership need to military assistance from outside, from Western democracy, and especially from the United States, because 4 years ago, in 2010, I was the first person to call for military alliance between Vietnam and the United States, just to prevent the invasion from China, especially in South China Sea, and in Vietnamese we always call in East Sea. And to Western democracy for economic benefits, as well as for military eventual potential military assistance from the United States, uh, Vietnamese government must introduce into the constitution some fundamentals, human rights. For example, uh, the right, the right of freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of association, freedom demonstration, or freedom of belief. But I call the introduction of some fundamental human rights in the constitution, Vietnamese constitution, just a deceptive strategy. Yeah, I just show you that. Yeah, now Vietnamese government need help, economic help, military help from Western democracies. So they put some human rights in the constitution, but immediately, Vietnamese government created some articles in penal code just to penalize every act of Vietnamese citizens aiming at implementing human rights written in the constitution. That the Article 79, carrying out activities aimed at overthrowing the people's administration. Article 88, conducting propaganda against the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. Article 258, abusing democratic freedom to infringe upon the interests of the state, the legitimate rights and interests of organizations and or citizens. But this article aims peacefully to a person who criticize Vietnamese Communist government, and they are gathered in organization or in forum. And until now, with these three articles in the penal code, Vietnamese government until now has imprisoned about 103 or more 100 people, dissident people, and especially among these political prisoners, there are some 440 people imprisoned under three criminal articles. And that's very, very bad thing that Vietnamese Communist government use political prisoners as commodity to barter with Western countries for economic benefits or military assistance, I should say. For example, they under special from international community, Vietnamese government had to release some prisoners. But even at the same time, this government arrest and imprison other people, other dissidents in Vietnam. So, in my own opinion, to remove, to stop the suppression of human rights by Vietnamese government, we must remove first the repressive laws, Article 79, Article 88, and Article 258 in the Penal Code. We must remove first these very inhuman stipulations in Vietnamese Penal Code. And of course, to remove the suppression of human rights by Vietnamese government, we must think first about the civil society. And according to the definition of the United Nations, civil society play the key role in building democracy. And that means democracy movement must be born from the civil society. But that is the opposite in Vietnam case. In Vietnam, it takes the democracy movement which spawn civil society, as I will demonstrate. And now I talked about civil society in Vietnam, but it's very, very funny. We meet in Vietnam a pseudo civil society that is called Vietnam Fatherland Front. Actually, Vietnam Fatherland Front composed of about 40 social professionals groups with the 5 pillars: Vietnam General Confederation of Labor, Ho Chi Minh Communist Youth Movement, Women's Union, Farmers Union, and Veterans Union, something like that. And this organization merely created by the Communist Party Vietnam just to help the party to execute the maximum control over the Vietnamese people. In other words, we can consider Vietnam Father Front is a government service because, in fact, every member of the apparatus of this organization is paid by Vietnamese government, considered officially as a government officer. And now I pass to identifying the pro-democracy movement in Vietnam. Of course, under the very totalitarian regime of Vietnamese Communist Party, Vietnamese people, in one way or another way, must stand up to oppose this dictatorship of Communist Party of Vietnam, and that form the democracy movement in Vietnam. And I can cite some elements of this movement, pro-democracy movement. First, individual dissidents, they criticize Communist Party Vietnam leadership, and myself, I was and I continue to be one of them. of individual dissidents. Secondly, dissidents who got in organization, dissident gathering, to protest communist government, and they used to issue joint statement, yeah, against PCV and the government policies. The third element, protesters in public spaces. Protesters generally are composed by very simple people, and more precisely, they are victims of illegal land confiscation by the government, or victims of unfair labor practices, and of generally of human rights repression. And finally, the protesters, they go in the street to protest the Vietnamese government cowardice toward China, because Communist China does not stop to invade Vietnam, especially in East Sea, South China Sea. And there is a photo. You can see my wife, Anthony, Nguyễn Thị Dương Hà, in front of a protest. Okay, sincerely, I find that she was much beautiful than she is now. Protest as a protester. Okay, we continue. I talk a little bit about myself, about my democracy activism. In fact, I began my anti-government activism in 2005, because at the time there were an economic project adopted by the administration Thừa Thiên Huế in central of Vietnam, but at the same time adopted by the Prime Minister at that time, Phan Văn Khải, and so many people from Vietnamese population did protest very strongly this economic project, but that didn't change the decision of this administration, simply because that project, economic project, was adopted by the Prime Minister. Yes, Prime Minister is everything, and people is nothing. And then I decided to file a lawsuit against that administration, against the administration of Thừa Thiên Huế, and that was the first lawsuit against an administration in Vietnam. And fortunately, I won the match, and the economic project had to be stopped. Yeah, so that's my first victory as a legal activist. And after I'm more and more, I felt that I had to do more for democracy in Vietnam. And in 2009, there was a very important event that many people in Vietnam protested both side mining project in the central of Vietnam, and even General Huy Ha Vu, former Minister of Defense of Vietnam, very well known, himself sent a letter protesting that project, and the letter was sent to Vietnamese leadership, but no answer, no response from Vietnamese leadership. Even General Huy Ha Vu raised already his voice. That means at the time, if there is no more decisive, strongest, very strong act to stop that project, and in that case, the project adopted by Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng, that would destroy totally the environment, as well as violate gravely the national defense, because with that project, China would be allowed to bring dozen workers on that region, but actually not a real, does not real workers, but Chinese army, and then before the danger, great danger to national security, to national environment, to for the life of thousand mountain peoples there, I decided to file a lawsuit against Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng, and that was the first time a Vietnamese citizen did suit the Prime Minister before the court, and even I think that even in communist history, worldwide communist history, that was the first, the first lawsuit against communist Prime Minister. And the next year, 2010, I filed another lawsuit against the Prime Minister for signing a decision, a decree preventing class action petition, because more and more they are a victim of illegal land confiscation by Vietnamese government, and Vietnamese government was very afraid of uprising by people, and then Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng issued this decree, and of course my lawsuit were not accepted by Vietnamese law, but the first time in Vietnam, a citizen, a simple citizen, has been able to put the symbol of the dictatorship of Communist Party before the court, just to say to everyone that we as a citizen, we has right equals to every Vietnamese leaders. And of course, many other activities. For example, I defended some 2,000 conservationists against the illegal land confiscation by the administration of Da Nang. And as a society, I wrote a very large mass of articles criticizing the leadership of Communist Party, requesting the elimination of dictatorship of Communist Party Vietnam. And as a society, I answer many foreign press, always about how to remove the dictatorial regime of Communist Party Vietnam. And finally, in November 5, Vietnamese police arrested me, and with the charge propaganda against the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. That's just the Article 88 in the Penal Code. Yeah. And as you see in this December, the same year, 2010, yeah, I was sentenced with the indictment of Hanoi procuracy, and that and that's the content of the indictment. Yeah, I request the elimination of the dictatorship of Communist Party. I said that the Vietnam War is a civil, basically a civil war between Vietnamese and the United States. The U.S. troops were not invaders. They were there just to help Vietnamese in the South to establish the democracy, as well as to contain communism from the North of Vietnam. Yeah, and it's very, especially in the context of Cold War, you understand. And for these are the opinions. Vietnamese court sentenced me in April 2011 to 7 years of imprisonment and 3 years of probation. And of course, I did appeal the sentence, but you see, the same system and Vietnamese Supreme Court upheld, of course, the court of first sentence. And but I did not fear, because I was, and until now I continue to be confident about my cause. I have been always right in struggling against the dictatorship of Communist Party Vietnam. And that's a photo. The photo just right after the Hanoi court sentencing. Yeah, and with I kept my head high, always high. Oh, not only in the court, but even after sentencing, high. I did it fight communist regime, and today before you, I wear the same suit I did wear when I was sentenced by communist regime. But 4 years ago, I was convicted. I was sentenced by Vietnamese communist government, and now the United States, I act as person who not only denounced but sentenced the communist regime in Vietnam. And in prison, they have been playing very much Carl. Really, I am artist. I was a member of Fine Arts Association Vietnam, and in the prison, I made many paintings, even with oil painting, that oil painting with size of 60 centimeter, 80 centimeter. That I gave these paintings the title, the oath, just to confirm that I was determined to fight communist regime in Vietnam until the end. Even after my death, I don't fear the death. And you say oath. And after my neck, you can see that's the guillotine. Yeah, after my neck. And in fact, in prison, many times I opened my shop, I showed my hat, and I told Vietnamese policeman, shoot, shoot. I don't care. I determined to fight you, to fight the communist regime until the end. Even I die, no problem. You see? And but fortunately, I have my wife, Attorney Nguyễn Thị Dương Hà. He's came see me very often in the prison, and because I had no camera, so I described my wife and me. Yeah, with I gave her the title. I wrote on the back of the paintings, waiting for your return, waiting the fidelity. You see, with rose, and as a painting, that's my prison cell. My prison cell. I show my prison cell, and that my bed in cemented my bed. Okay, so that's my prison cell, B11, B11. Oh, but I was not handsome with the. Okay, thank you. So should I maybe I look better? Okay, and another symbol that fight, the fight. I call that the fight as the bull. Yeah, you see the bull that. I want to set up myself, and in the background, red background, yeah, I was fighting against the communist regime in Vietnam, and in the prison, I was fighting always, even with my with hunger strike, and I conducted the hunger strike the first time that last 26 days, yeah, and I told I make many protests of myself. Thank you. That Huy Ha Vu artist in prison. But after my wife, after the Nguyễn Thị Dương Hà posted all these paintings on the internet, and American accused me, Vietnamese government was very oppressed, and they prevented me to send my other paintings to outside for my attorney Nguyễn Thị Dương Hà. And just to finish about my art capacity, last year on July 4th, the National Day of the United States, I painted George Washington. Not only one painting, two painting. But of course, Vietnamese police confiscated these two paintings. But I think sincerely that along with Vietnamese people, with your help from international community, with American government assistance, with SNAP too, assistance too, I will win with Vietnamese people, and then win over the communist regime in Vietnam, and then I will take back all my paintings kept by Vietnamese police, including George Washington painting, and then I will show you, right after the victory over communist regime in Vietnam. Okay. No. That. Okay. So I must go to as the 11th of democracy movement in Vietnam. Dissident now gathered in organization, and I can cite many examples. For example, the dissident and other Vietnamese people signed the petition to stop bauxite mining project, and this petition collected about 3,000 signatures. And petition for the release of Dr. Huy Ha Vu, myself, and that petition collected the same number of signatures, about 1,000 signatures. And petition sent by 72 very famous intellectuals in Vietnam, and very well-known figures in Vietnam for the revision of 1992 Constitution. But the content of the petition is to request the abolition of the totalitarian regime of Communist Party of Vietnam. And this petition, 72, that collected about 15,000 signatures. Very impressive. And recently, this year, in July 28th, 61 senior members of Communist Party Vietnam sent a letter to communist leadership to request the abolition of dictatorship of this party. And you know, 4 years ago, I was first person to request publicly, openly, the abolition of the dictatorship of Communist Party Vietnam. And now, even members of this party themselves, they now request the sending the abolition of the inhuman party, Communist Party Vietnam, and finally, in September this year, 20 senior officers of the armed force, army, police, and half of them are general. They sent a petition to Vietnamese leaders requesting not to use the army and the police to repress the people, to cancel the clause in Vietnamese constitution according to which the armed force must be loyal to the Communist Party Vietnam. They requested the abolition, this clause, this stipulation, about the loyalty of the armed force about toward the Communist Party. Yeah. And of course, now that this movement enjoy tacit support from people still working in the apparatus of Communist Party Vietnam, in the armed force, as well as in the government. And I think the removal of communist regime will be the cause of everyone in Vietnam, even the people who are still working in the Vietnamese administration. And I pass to the role, very important role of the internet. The internet as an engine of democracy movement. Earlier, Professor Zachary Abuza talked very, very in detail about the role of internet in Vietnam, as well as the suppression of internet user by Vietnamese government. That was very, very interesting. And so I just repeat that in Vietnam now there is a very large population who regularly access to the internet, and that is the internet become a very useful, very helpful tool for pro-democracy activists in Vietnam, because through in the internet, dissident and pro-democracy activists can gather to oppose to Vietnamese Communist government. And in my sentence, the Vietnamese procuracy use eight evidence out of 10 evidence, but 8 evidence were my articles or my interviews posted already in the internet, and I myself I requested in 2010 the prosecution of Lieutenant General of Police for ordering the sabotage of some 300 anti-government websites and blogs. Yeah, that's just to show you the very important role of the internet for the pro-democracy and human rights movement, as well as that represent a very real danger for the survival of Communist Party of Vietnam. And now I go to the civil society, and thanks to very strong democracy movement I just described. Now in Vietnam, there are some 25 independent civil society organizations. Just some example. And of course, civil society organization, always act against the communist regime, but nearly most of them, most of dissident or activists are destroyed financially by the Vietnamese government. And so I, of course, and that limit greatly their activity. So I hope international community, democratic community, will find the means to help pro-democracy and human rights movement in Vietnam financially too, not only spiritually. And I will pass it very quickly. And now, yeah.
Dr. Vu, can I
Yeah.
ask you to finish in 5 minutes?
Oh, okay.
We only have,
Okay.
we only have 25 minutes,
Okay,
and,
okay.
and we want to have questions. 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. From time to time, I forgot that I was here in the United States. I felt that I was still in Vietnam. I was fighting communist regime in Vietnam, faced directly to them. So I forgot. Excuse me. Okay, and that some suggestion to develop civil society in Vietnam. And of course, I have elaborated some arguments to remove the three articles in penal code allowing Vietnamese communist government to arrest and imprison dissidents, to suppress dissident movement. Yeah. So article because generally all these three articles 79, 88 to 158 of in the penal code quite contrary to Vietnamese constitution, and at the same time quite contrary to international covenant on civil and political rights. So we can rely on Vietnamese, even on Vietnamese constitution and the international covenant on civil and political rights to remove, to fight these very criminal articles, inhuman. And to remove the communist regime in Vietnam, so we must rely first on civil society in Vietnam, and how can civil society in Vietnam can organize their its fighting against communist regime. That's just some suggestions. And regionally, there is a human rights declaration of ASEAN countries, and we can rely on this declaration. And at the same time, I hope some democratic countries in ASEAN will urge Vietnamese government to let come participate in some seminars on human rights organized by this country. And the international community, of course, should help Vietnamese people to democratize Vietnam by pushing Vietnamese government to remove first three articles in the penal code, and at the same time can urge Vietnamese government to release immediately and unconditionally all political prisoners or prisoners of conscience, and enact the laws that ensure a human rights stability in constitution, and finally, urge Vietnamese government to begin think about to organize free election under international control. That's will begin a new phase, the first step, yeah, for democracy in Vietnam. Um, and how to urge, how to force Vietnamese government to remove all the inhuman, anti-human rights articles in penal code, yeah, as well as urge Vietnamese government to to engage in a process of democratization. I think that international community, democratic community, especially the United States, must use laws, investment, trade, and even military aid. Yeah. I think U.S. State Department began to succeed in that mission, and I think Vietnamese government must uh, anyway cannot stand on its position. And anyway, I hope all the inhuman articles in penal code will be abolished next year. I hope. And I will go to the end. 1 minute, exactly. And yeah, I call for on the international democracy to support democracy and human rights movement in Vietnam, and there are some suggestions. And the role of Western embassies based in Hanoi, in Vietnam, very important, because you there you can intervene directly, yeah, to with the Vietnamese government to stop suppression of human rights by this inhuman government. And now I go to the end of my presentation. Okay, so conclusion. Of course, the dictatorship of Communist Party Vietnam, because it is inhuman, it is against the humanity, must be abolished. But this regime, the criminal regime, can be abolished by two ways. Either by violence or by peaceful way. Myself, I opt for the second way, by peaceful way. But peaceful way that requires the pressure, very strong pressure, not only from Vietnamese people, but especially, mainly from international democratic community, especially the United States, because first two very peaceful democracy movement in Vietnam, Vietnamese Communist government, up to this, they don't fear the democratic peaceful democratic in Vietnam, but they fear international democratic community, and especially they very fear the United States. And then I insist that pressure from international democratic community, especially the U.S. government, will be decisive in implementing human rights in Vietnam, thus paving the way for a peaceful democratic transition in Vietnam. And finally, democratization in Vietnam, once done, will create a domino effect throughout the remainder of the communist regimes in the world, like China, North Korea, Cuba, and I hope very soon all of us will see a world Thank you for your attention. That's my father, and that's me. Thank you.
Well, it's quite extraordinary. I just want everybody to know that when Dr. Vu arrived at the NED just 8 months ago, he didn't speak a word of English. And so the fact that you gave that whole presentation in English, even if at times a little bit halting, was, I think, quite extraordinary. And my congratulations. And I also caught the very interesting use of the term domino effect at the end, which reminds us that there's a lot of history here that also involves our own country. Before I introduce Zach, I just want to take a moment just to thank the Open Society Foundations, which has provided a grant for an emergency fellowship here at the NED for Dr. Vu. Zach.
It's very humbling to have to follow someone who has shown such incredible bravery and the courage of his convictions. It really is, and not just Dr. Vu, but also his wife, Attorney Ha, who is very well known for her own courage and legal activism. You heard the passion from Dr. Vu. From me, you're going to hear very quickly cold-hearted realism. I'm not here to talk about overthrowing the Communist Party. I am an American, and I have the interests of America at heart, and I want the United States to work with a successful Vietnamese government that is a strong economy, that is a leader in ASEAN, because we have so many shared interests and ultimately shared values. We also have, for better or for worse, a lot of shared history. I do worry about some of the bloggers and petitioners and dissidents who do go very far in their demands. You can look at Block 8049 or Petition 72 in 2013 when it came to reforming the Constitution. People that have wanted to overthrow or abolish Article 4 of the Constitution, which gives the Communist Party its vanguard position, i.e. above the law. There is a discussion now whether and Dr. Vu referenced this, whether there should, the Vietnam People's Army should be constitutionally bound to defend the people, the state, rather than the Communist Party. These are very, very sensitive issues, and I think it's very important to pick battles where you can win them. You can only take so many knocks. I am committed to opening up civil society in Vietnam, and the country is in desperate need to break the lock that the Communist Party has had on this. This is a very, very youthful, tech-savvy, young, globalized population. They are ambitious, and they're really, really desireful to catch up and to be a regional leader. It is, as I said, tech-savvy, 44% internet penetration in the country. In the cities, it's probably 60 to 70%. And we focused a lot when we talk about dissidents and activists on the bloggers who have been systematically targeted. We've seen that the government has really a threefold strategy for dealing with them. And the first is that they are targeting the key bloggers. And with simple algorithms, it's very easy for them to figure out who are the most influential figures. The second thing they've done is they've gone after people that have tried to create organized websites, i.e. make the transition from individual blog pages to multi-author, semi-professional, edited alternative news sites. And that's it. It's an important distinction. And the government has really gone after those bloggers that have tried to make that leap. You can see it in their sentences that they receive usually at least twice the sentence than simple bloggers. The third thing that the government has really done to try to stifle this online dissent is by going after the lawyers, especially the lawyers that have had the temerity to take on the cases of these dissidents. And this is really important. I think Dr. Vu, where his real value added, and I hope you take the time to go back and look at his very thoughtful presentation and look at the work he's done, his history of defending people, bringing on lawsuits. Passion's here, but he's always decided that the way that you're really going to get things done is by challenging the inconsistencies in the laws. And I think that's really where the progress has to go. The Constitution, the Penal Code, so many other decrees are chock-a-block with loopholes. And if you really care about giving civil society more space in Vietnam, it's by closing the loopholes, not necessarily overthrowing the system. And it's the legal profession that's going to play such a critical role here. And I can go into other more detail, but I'd really like to wrap this up so we can get to questions because it is Dr. Vu's day. But I think it's also important to really find commonality with what are in the interests of the state. The state's very concerned about environmental change, degradation, very concerned about the issue of land rights. These are areas that you have to work with and find common ground. The government is absolutely obsessed about being caught in the middle income trap. They want to become a center of technology. Well, guess what? You can't have that without a free internet. So you just have to start to find common ground with the government and really work. There are reformers in the government, and there are people committed to really turning Vietnam into a law-governed society. And I really hope that people continue to focus on the law, on fixing loopholes within the laws, and importantly, building up a very solid legal profession. It's a new field in Vietnam. This is not a country that's had a long history of an independent legal body. And I think we've got to start to train more lawyers because after a while, they will start to take on the issues of rights of individuals. It just cannot be a handful of brave souls like Dr. Vu.
Thank you so much, Zach, for pulling it all together. And in a way, giving a very good, context in which will help us understand Dr. Vu's presentation. I think we have about 10 minutes left, and I really want to open it up to the audience. So why don't we, hear from a few people, and then we'll take responses from up here. Start over here. And wait for the mic, and please introduce yourself. Right here, right here.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Mimi Carmichael Rohrbach, and there's a remarkable story that really opened up my eyes with Dr. Vu and with Ha, who are really remarkable people. It's courage. And when he was in jail, he actually told a story about how he had people that were around him that were just, they're not good people. And he was very, very focused on his purpose in life and his whole purpose and focus for the country of Vietnam. And he just started talking with people right there in the jail about what he believed in. And they came in his corner and they were there supporting him. And I think that's a remarkable story because no matter where he is positively able to communicate and is very effective. People do understand him when he gets the audience and he can speak with them, but all different kinds of people. We're talking prisoners that actually started believing in him and were standing right by him. So I found that remarkable, and I just simply wanted to say that.
Thank you very much.
The great irony, of course, is that the Communist Party's recruitment was in the prisons.
Walk right back. Yeah, right there, right there.
Thank you. Thank you for a very interesting presentation. My name is Christina Cerna, and I'm now with Georgetown University Law Center, but I spent over 3 decades with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. And I was happy to hear Dr. Vu mention the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration and ICHOR, the Intergovernmental Human Rights Commission that's been created in Asia. And I've been advising them for the past 7 years on what a minimally credible human rights commission needs to do to be internationally accepted. I can add that they haven't taken any of my recommendations, but that doesn't stop me from continuing to make them. One of the main problems of ICHOR is that it doesn't have a complaints mechanism. But since it is a human rights commission, it's perfectly natural for victims of human rights violations to present complaints to this commission. And what victims normally do in other regional bodies is also hold press conferences to indicate that they have presented a petition to the regional human rights body, and that gives it a certain amount of international attention. If Vietnamese civil society organizations were to do this, this would help give them some international exposure to their activities.
Thank you. And, whoa, we have 3 hands right. Start over here and then go to the back on the aisle.
Thank you. My name is Jeannie Nguyen with Voice of Vietnamese Americans. I welcome Dr. Vu and Mrs. Dương Ha to the United States. I came here in 75 fleeing from the communist regime. And as I heard you repeatedly saying that the Vietnamese now denounce communism, I thank you for that. So Mr. Vu came from the north. He was one of the children of the founding fathers, kind of the communist regime. So that, I thank Dr. Zachary Abuza for making the statement of the cold reality. But as an American, I would like to also make short statements. First, as an American, I believe that it's our national interest, national security, and also regional ASEAN ASEAN regional security and peace, that we would need to have a democratic Vietnam. It's for everybody's interest, mutual interest, regional interest, Vietnam's interest, Vietnamese people's interest, Americans' interest, and the global interest, that we look to have a democratic Vietnam. By that, I would think that it's been proven by history, by experience, in many different ways, that communism is not working. It's a wrong path for any society to go to. And it's our duty as an American, as a citizen of the world, to somehow help the people inside it to change. So I thank you, everyone who has helped Dr. Vu to come here. And I hope we continue his work to change Vietnam from the inside so that we can have a democratic Vietnam. So would China, because 1.3 billion of Chinese people do not want communism. Only 3 million of them are communist members.
Thank you.
So I want to say one thing.
All right, try to be
Dr.
brief
Vu,
because we
yes.
only have 5 more minutes and there are a lot of other people who want to
Yes.
speak.
50 seconds. Article 4 in the Constitution of Vietnam. Dr. Huy Ha Vu was the first one to ask to abolish it. In 2013, the whole Vietnamese people vote to abolish it. I need to make a point. That's the Vietnamese people's wish to abolish Article 4 in the Vietnamese Constitution. So we very much want to say that a democratic Vietnam actually is the work of the Vietnamese people.
Of course.
And the Americans can help. You cannot decide.
Thank you. Thank you. That's wonderful. Go right back there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Trung Trinh, and I'm a Vietnamese American who's been in this country since 1980. And thank you, Dr. Vu, for his presentation. I really admire his courage. I was working for the previous government before 1975, and I stayed in jail for 5 years, but everybody paid the due, so I already paid the due. And what I'm trying to say today is after the presentation, I think that Dr. Vu forgot the fact that we have about 2 million Vietnamese Americans living in the United States. And those people can do something for our own people. I believe one thing, that nobody can help us if we don't know how to help ourselves. For 2 million Vietnamese Americans living in the United States, they have about if each person has 10 relatives in Vietnam, we can expand, we can help those people to expand their knowledge, the information, and so that they can be better. They can gain access into the information. So the 12 million US dollars sending back to Vietnam every year is a big access. So I don't sit here and waiting for international community to help us. We have to help ourselves first. And I think that for the Vietnamese American in this room, we need to come up with a formula to stay together, to work together. Because solving the Vietnamese problem, the communist problem, is not the only one prong. It's a multi-pronged strategy. And I agree with Dr. Abuza, but personally, I don't look into the way we have to pick the battle that we can win. So I don't want to overthrow the government, but we have to work within the system, try to come up with something to solve the inconsistency in their legal problem. And for that, I just want to contribute some of my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. David, and then right behind David, and then in the back. We'll take those three, and I think that's going to be it.
Dr. Vu, powerful presentation, although I don't agree with everything you said about your wife.
She's beautiful.
She's every bit as beautiful as she was in that photo.
Right.
Could you tell us about what age you were when you came to appreciate the virtue of multi-party democracy and the bankruptcy of communism? And are a lot of young people in the same category as you are in terms of believing in the virtue of multi-party democracy?
Do you want to answer very, very briefly to that question? Do you want to answer, David, briefly? How old were you? All right, I'm not sure how much time we have to really get into it.
Okay, thank you for your question.
Do it in Vietnamese and it can be translated.
Actually, I began to see that communist regime is unacceptable and must be abolished when I was 22 years old about that. Just precisely when 1 year after I worked in the foreign ministry of Vietnam, because when I was high school, always I was indoctrinated with Marxism, Leninism, communism. But after my working in the foreign ministry, I began to meet some realities that show that there is a very big, quite difference between the words and the act of communist government, of Communist Party Vietnam. For example, I was elected in 1980. Was trade unions leaders, and I did try to protect the interests of the interest of other colleagues in my service in foreign ministry. But I could not protect them because everything was decided by above direction. So I could not change. I could not change the situation to protect effectively the interests of the people, in this case of my colleagues. And after I resigned from the post of trade unions leaders, and then I began to study how the communist regime in Vietnam can lie so long, and of course I was not, and I never Communist Party members. No, when I was very young, 21, 22 years old only. So.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're going to take these last two. Right here and then in the back. I see your hand. Sorry.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Hidetoshi Hashimoto. I'm a author of the book Prospects for Regional Human Rights Mechanism in East Asia. Now, I'm a little bit behind. Could you comment on current relationship between Vietnam's government and Chinese government? Thank you.
All right, and then the back, in the back.
I'll pick up on the question just asked by our colleague. My name is Kyle Hurst. I'm a former UN official in Vietnam. Dr. Vu, thank you for your presentation. I have to say it doesn't make sense to me for this reason. The repressive mechanisms you describe are subsidized from Beijing. They're substantially directed from Beijing. The party directorates in Beijing and Hanoi have become so tightly woven together in the 25 years since Tang Do, it will take decades and decades to unwind them, even if that were to happen. So shouldn't we think that the collapse of the regime in Beijing is a necessary prerequisite to any meaningful political change taking place in Vietnam? Thank you.
Okay, that's great. These are large questions, and if you want, I'm going to give Dr. Vu and Zachary Abuza maybe 1 minute. If you want to comment on China, you have 1 minute to comment on China, to solve the China problem. Does Vietnam need to have China become democratic before Vietnam, or will Vietnam's democracy lead to China's democracy, as you said in your talk?
Thank you for your question. Yeah, as I showed on my presentation, I think that it's the more favorable condition for Vietnam to be democratized before Communist China, because anyway, China, Communist China, still very strong economically. Why Vietnamese government, Communist government, very weak? Now Vietnam in very grave crisis economically, and at the same time, the movement, the democracy movement, is much stronger than in China. And I believe that Vietnamese people can go to democratization, the regime in Vietnam, before the collapse of Communist Party of China.
Okay, but the domino effect will, okay. Zach.
2,000 years of fiercely resisting Chinese pressure and power. Every major boulevard in every city in the country named after someone who defeated the Chinese. I don't buy it that Vietnam is completely subservient to the Chinese Communist Party. Certainly there are elites, conservatives within the Communist Party who do fear democratization, who do share an ideological affinity towards the Chinese Chinese regime or ideology, but they certainly are not selling out the country interests. That said, you know, even reformers in Vietnam have always been wary about getting ahead of Chinese reforms. And that is a problem. And I think that's starting to change now because, you know, there is a very active debate. We don't always see it within the Vietnamese polity over the future of the country and, you know, whether the economic future of the country is going to be tied to closer ties with Japan, with the rest of ASEAN, the EU, and America. Because right now, the economic dependence or over-reliance on China is really threatening to Vietnam.
Thank you. And, you know, in conclusion, I just want to make three very, very quick points. The first is that, and as came out of a discussion we had earlier today, there has already been enormous change economically and even politically. And at an earlier session we had, Zach made that, I think, very, very clear. Still a long way to go, but the process has already started. And let me also say that I think the meetings that we've had today is really the beginning in a larger sense of our own involvement on this issue. And I think there will be others who will be involved on this issue because Vietnam, I think, is ready, is increasingly ready to engage with the world and also to move in a direction of political, not only economic, but also political modernization. And finally, I just want to thank Dr. Vu. I mean, you wore this suit today for this presentation. That makes me very, very happy. Thank you, Dr. Vu.